was coming in. We were about 150 miles out, and then we heard this announcement on the radio, Delta 295, hold at the next point. You are not allowed to enter the airspace. And I have never heard that before. I've been flying over in Asia forever. So I said to the other two pilots, I said, you know what, that's, never heard that. There's something really bad happening. And that was about 3 o'clock. The earthquake happened at about 2:48, maybe 2:50, I think. So it was still new to the Narita airport, the shaking and what they were going to do. So they just told us to hold. So we started holding, started contacting dispatch, trying to, and then we heard Narita is closed right now due to a runway inspection, due to an earthquake. So we're thinking, okay, they have plenty of earthquakes, no big deal. It'll be over in about 10 minutes, and then we can land. And about 20 minutes later, they still were saying, stand by. The airport's closed due to earthquake for runway inspection. And now we're starting to get lower and lower on gas, so now we have to decide where we're going to go and start the divert process. Well, normally a divert is very easy. If the winds or the weather is bad, then you just go to a lot of the different alternates, Narita, Yokota. A little further out, you can go to Nagoya, and you can also, 300 miles out, you can go to Osaka. Up north, you can go to Sapporo. But the problem was, this was unprecedented, so they made a blanket statement, said, Yokota's closed, Hanita's closed, say intentions, So now you have to decide where you're going to go further out. So we quickly, I told the other pilot to give me the Yokota tower frequency, and I just called them on the radio. Are you really closed? And they said, well, not if you're in an emergency. So we declared an emergency and went into Yokota. Because we had already gone down to, not a low fuel state, but a fuel state where we need to land somewhere quickly, and the Japanese ATC was not helping us out because they basically were so shocked, and they didn't. This was unprecedented. They had never diverted they basically evacuated the airport of all employees, which is why they closed. And they couldn't make a decision, and our dispatch couldn't make a decision because they didn't know what to do. They kept hearing that everywhere was closed. So we were sort of on our own, which is very unusual. Well, as I was flying, the captain made the announcement basically saying that due to an earthquake in Tokyo, the Tokyo airport is closed, so we're diverting to Yokota. Something very basic. And in the initial time, we didn't know there was a tsunami. We didn't know that there was nuclear reactor damage, etc. So until we landed, and then people started turning on their cell phones and talking to. Actually, all cell phones were out. There was no cell signal, but people had emails, and they were getting emails, and they were hooking up to. I don't know how they were getting information, but a lot of the passengers knew a lot more than we did. The tweets and the emails were all working flawlessly. It was only cell phones and landlines that were down. The dispatcher kept thinking that Narita was going to open, and we were going to get gas, and a few hours later, fly in there. But it stayed closed because of the earthquake, basically. And a lot of the roads were damaged throughout the country. So there was generally a huge state of unknown. And because our dispatcher, about 4 hours later, we landed about 4:30 in the afternoon, or maybe 4 o'clock, because of our long divert. And at about 9:30, we finally made a decision because our dispatcher kept saying, well, let's get gas and go. Well, no, stand by. And an hour later they'd say, yeah, we think you're going to go. And an hour later they said, no. Stand by, you're probably going to get off the plane. And then finally, after about 4 hours, I said to the captain, hey, we either, we want to be the first one to either say we're going to stay at Yokota, or we definitely want to go. You don't want to be the 9th plane with, 400 passengers on every plane, deciding you can stay in Yokota, and there's no room at the end. So you either want to be first or you want to leave. So we basically told Yokota, we're going to stay. And then as soon as we said that, our other Delta plane right behind us said, we're going to stay too. So now you have 2 planes with 600 people, passengers, already saturating Yokota. That's probably as many people as they could have taken, realistically. So the other 9 planes basically had to leave, which they were all planning, going somewhere else anyway. and a lot of them went to Haneda or Osaka or some of the other fields. But no one got to go into Narita because it was still closed until the next morning. And it was very, it was heartwarming to see the Yokota, airmen working their butts off. So we got all our people off on all these big buses, brought them to the community center. They all had cots or little benches, and they all got box lunches. And we were really lucky. We got to stay in the BOQs. Some people that got into Haneda and some of the other places had to actually stay on the plane overnight. So they were on the plane for over 30 hours. About midnight that night, I finally got to my room about 11:30 because we had to coordinate all the passengers, make sure they were all okay. There was also a cat, like cats in the cargo bin, things of that way.
Right.
They're not taken care of, so we had to use some methods. I had to call maintenance and figure out how to open the cargo door because it was basically us. So I learned how to open the cargo bin and take a really screaming cat out of there and bring it to the vet on base just for overnight. Once we were, during that 5-hour wait, when we were trying to figure out whether we were going to just get gas and go or stay at Yokota, we started hearing from the flight attendants and all the passengers, and they had their phones on, and they said, "Wow, it looks like there's going to be 1,000 deaths or up to 1,000 deaths, and there's a lot of damage and things like that. Roads closed." It was an interesting experience, but we just hope that the Japanese people can overcome the nuclear disaster and get back to their normal lives.